meeting, I'll just indicate who's in the room here. Actually, we can just quickly go around. It's a small group, so I'll start on my left.
Mike Seelig, OEIB.
This is Ben Cannon with the governor.
Whitney Groves, OEIB.
Kylie Gruno, Chalkboard Project.
Morgan Allen, OSBA.
Chuck Bennett, COSA.
Carol Otto, SOS.
Seth Allen.
Great. So at this point, it's still possible, I suppose, that Kay Turan, who's the other member of this subcommittee, could join. But Julia, I'd encourage you to go ahead and open the meeting.
Great, thank you so much. I think what I'd like to first do is just have the committee members on the phone just formally introduce themselves, first, last name, you're on the board, and then what you also do in your other life not on the board. So I'm Julia Brim-Edwards, OEIB board member, and at Nike Global Government and Public Affairs.
I'm Mary Spilby. I'm on the OEIB board, and I'm president at Lane Community College in Eugene.
Hannah Vandering, I'm an elementary physical education teacher, currently on leave, president-elect of Oregon Education Association, and on the OEIB.
Not working. 888.
I'm Samuel Henry, member of the faculty at Portland State University on the OEIB.
Great. Thank you, everybody. So the scope of our work today, as it's been defined, is that we're going to recommend an interim chief education officer, ideally for a time period of approximately 6 months. I thought the agenda we could use for this meeting is to start with
Is that you, Mark?
This is Mark.
Right. So for the agenda, I thought we'd start with the desired experience and qualifications that we used in our original Chief Education Officer recruitment, discuss whatever additional criteria we might have for an interim that might be either different or additive, that we formulate a recommendation. Is there any...
I'm sorry, Julia, this is Hannah. Who just joined the call?
Mark Mulvihill.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything else that people would like to add to the agenda of our meeting today? Okay, so I thought I'd start with the desired experience and qualifications that we had developed as part of the original recruitment of the Chief Education Officer. And for those, Hannah was involved in this process, but we spent a fair amount of time on the front end in the recruitment committee developing a consensus around what experience and qualifications we thought was needed in the role of the Chief Education Officer. And this is something, it was a very iterative process. I think at the end we were on draft 16. We spoke to a whole host of stakeholders, whether it was superintendents, the community college presidents, coalition of color, teachers, parents. So the experience and qualifications that we developed was with input from a fairly broad group of stakeholders, both from the education community, but also the broader community as well. And I'm just going to run through them just as a reminder to people what we said we were going to be looking for. There were essentially 5 areas of criteria that we were looking for. The first was leadership with results, so proven leadership ability with demonstrated track record in large and complex organizations with diverse constituencies, the track record of identification and implementation of best practices across an organizational structure. Second, a change agent. Demonstrated ability to advance, achieve, and sustain major system change through personal leadership abilities, team building skills, and innovative use of resources. The third, systems experience. Practical knowledge of system-wide approaches to achieve institutional change, integrative thinker, ability to design, direct, streamline, align, and navigate complex organizational systems to achieve desired outcomes. Fourth was educational expertise and experience. So experience as an educator or in a leadership position in public education, understands and values a strong public education system and has the ability to work across the early learning, K-12, and higher ed continuum. And fifth, strong communicator. Excellent communication skills demonstrated with multiple audiences, ability to integrate collaboration, communication, and feedback in the education community, ability to articulate and inspire, commitment to a shared vision for educational accomplishment at all levels. That's what we put together as the criteria for the position when we started our recruitment. And Hannah, I don't know if you want to speak at all to the process by which we developed them or our thinking around them. You participated in the process. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I think you covered it. I think we'd had a lot of conversations, and we really looked at what we thought were the most important components, and that's what we came up with after, these 16, 17 iterations.
Is there anything that, in sort of a year later, that people think on the committee think that we should add to that criteria? Not so much, or we maybe had a miss, or there was a nuance that, with a year under our belts, we might view something differently.
Well, this is Samuel. I don't think we need to adjust what we originally set out to do. I think that's sound, and I remember hearing reports back on it. I think we do need a little bit of attention to mid-course corrections, but I don't see where that affects the job description.
And this is Hannah. I don't think the job description necessarily needs to change, but I think, as Samuel just said, maybe some mid-course about where we need to put some emphasis in looking for the next individual who will serve in this capacity, and the strong communicator, someone who can build the bridges and really help us move the agenda in a positive way, I think is something I would look for.
This is Mark. I agree with that. I do think that whether this is a nuance or it's spelled out, I'm okay either way. But we have a strategic plan. We have an equity lens. We have the beginnings of the Early Learning Council work in the hubs. Something about implementation of the direction that's been established. And if that's more of what Hannah and Samuel just said, I'm good with it, but I would like to see us somehow emphasize that.
Okay. Anybody else? Ben, is there anything from the governor's office on just the original criteria that you would want to comment on, or
Nope.
any concerns? Okay. So then the second piece, since this isn't a process by which we are going to be sort of recommending and selecting a chief education officer, rather it's the interim, I thought about some additional criteria that we might want to overlay. So we want the right person. I think generally we've affirmed that the criteria or the experience we're looking for is still relevant. So additional criteria that I thought we might want to put in play for the interim appointment would be the following. One, that they could relatively seamlessly slip into the work without disruption and move it forward. Given it's an interim and we have work underway, the ability for somebody to step into the role and continue the work is, learn the job, the players, and then, have 2 months of maybe moving the ball forward just a little bit. Then I think one thing that would be important in order to be able to do that is having a network of Oregon and national relationships that could be leveraged in order to move the work forward. And then finally, and this is more on the candidate side, but willing to consider the appointment for approximately 6 months. So those are the things that I thought of, and I think members of the committee, if you have other things you want to add, or if you disagree with those, we should have that discussion now, or if you have a different point of view.
I don't disagree with them. I'm not. I was pretty happy with the job description. I think those are some of the pieces that we need to share with our colleagues on the OEIB and talk about as we begin or begin the next phase for all of us. I think you've outlined some pieces that are critical if we're going to get to where we want to go. But I don't, unless my colleagues, I'm still happy with the job description. I don't think we've changed the job description. I think we've changed in terms of some of the things we're thinking about as the board. But I will go with my colleagues on that.
I'd like to see what Julia just said for the interim to be included. I do believe that it's got to be somebody who can hit the ground running in a short period and doesn't have a huge learning curve and already has a network in Oregon. It's a different job description than when we post and we have time to do it, but I agree with what Julia said. It needs to be somebody who can hit the ground running, has networks, is familiar with the work, and we can move.
Well, I don't disagree with any of that. I was just, okay.
We're on the same page.
So, Julia, may I ask this, Hannah? So we're looking to appoint an interim into the position of Chief Education Officer, and are we going to have the conversation as a board whether the interim selection will be eligible to apply for the position in an ongoing way, or is that something we're going to discuss? So if we appoint someone, are they eligible to apply to be the Chief Education Officer after their interim position?
I think that would be an appropriate discussion at the full board level.
Okay.
I think we should make a recommendation on who we think fits the sort of customized criteria for the interim, and then when we get to the full board, we can have that conversation. Do you have a point of view one way or the other?
I have a slight reservation on moving someone forward to the board who, I know who I think is ready and able to do this job in a very effective manner, but I would not want to appoint this person if this person were not able to apply for the job, because I would like them to do so.
Okay,
so I just want to say, I just want to make sure there's no, if we put the name forward and then they say yes and they're not able to apply for the job, that would be awful.
So I can clarify. There hasn't been a discussion that there would be a disqualification for applying for the permanent position. So that hasn't been part of the criteria. So when I say that it should be, we should have that discussion at the full board, it's not because that's a current criteria we have and that's going to carry with our recommendation. But I think we should have the conversation at the full board level.
So I hear what you're saying. Just to clarify, kind of go a different direction with the question. Could it come from this committee that there's a recommendation that an interim should be eligible to apply
Yes, we could entertain that. I think in the same spirit that they're going to receive our recommendation, that they can choose to accept it. But I think that would be within the scope of what we could recommend today. As the management committee, and then knowing that, as with our recommendation, it would have to have the majority support of the board. That work for you?
Yeah, I do. I'd love this to make sure that what we do makes sense. It just is, in my mind, that's something that's important, and I don't know whether it would be best to have something written out coming from us or not. So I look forward to your opinions.
Ben, do you have a point of view? I feel like we should be able to make that recommendation, and again, but knowing that it would need to be either ratified or discussed by the full.
You should feel perfectly comfortable to make that recommendation to the full OEIB, and I have every expectation that the governor would support that recommendation, that the candidate be eligible to apply for a permanent position when that process unfolds.
Other discussion on the criteria?
This is Samuel. I'm going to be a little different. That happened. And I'm going to say that I am very supportive of the sense of what was being discussed in terms of the interim possibly being a candidate, or certainly not prohibited. But I'm not sure that I want to say that as a recommendation. I may be the only one on that, and I can deal with that.
Hey, you want to share what your reservation may be, and given we might have a...
Yeah, I think when you say that, you're already messing around with the process that's upcoming, and I like to not mess with that process that's upcoming, even though I'm very much in favor of, when there's full discussion by the board, that the interim would not be precluded from applying.
So, I guess one thing I would say to that is, if the committee or the full board is not clear on that particular point prior to the appointment, we may or may not have willing candidates to serve in that position. So it may be something that we can have a discussion, and Hannah, if you wanted to move the recommendation, and if it moves, it moves. If it doesn't move, I think we should all be aware that we probably would have to have greater clarity on that particular point prior to the appointment, because the candidate or candidates may or may not. They may want to reserve the right to take themselves out of the process if they were interested in the permanent position.
Well, just for clarity's sake, I think that when you put that in minutes and in a job description, it says to a lot of people who might apply, don't apply. We've got an inside candidate. There's no sense going there. I think in a little bit we're going to discuss some actual names and some people. I would certainly of what I'm thinking about and what I hope we get to by the end of this phone call, want if any of those persons to put their name forward in terms of the job, even if they were the interim or a person considered for the interim. What I was real hesitant about was the practice of stipulating that in either the job description or the discussion that leads to the job description, something that might be able to turn, or not be able to, but have the capacity to turn away people who might apply to the to the what you call it, permanent position. But I'm not. This is something that I'm just weighing in on. I'm not.
No,
I don't want to hold things up here.
It's a legitimate issue because I know often with an executive recruitment, candidates will ask, is there somebody who has an inside track position, and it does change the composition of the pool. Having listened to both Hannah's point and Samuel's point, it seems that possibly if you were silent on the issue, you might accomplish both objectives.
I would hope so.
You're not flagging it in advance that there is an inside candidate, but then also you're not excluding the possibility. So just throw that out as a...
Exactly. That was my perspective here.
Mary, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I'm thinking that maybe being silent on it is the better, is maybe the way through this. I mean, I would want the interim candidate to be, to have the option of applying if he or she wanted to do that. I don't really believe in precluding our pool or precluding people from going after a job if they want it. So if the board had a full discussion of that, I would be very supportive of leaving that open to whoever wanted to apply, interim or not. In terms of moving forward now, I do think that an interim appointment might be interested in knowing if applying was an option. That wouldn't surprise me if that was a question that they had. So either we have to be crystal clear or probably being clear about that. But silence, lack of a motion might leave it open. If we don't discuss it clearly,
Have we looked at
the person would be able to apply.
Have we looked at the time frame of the interim position? Is there a locked-in time frame?
We're looking for a approximate 6-month appointment.
6-month appointment, it would end at the end of the 6 months.
Correct. I mean, give or take a little bit depending on when they start.
So essentially, 1st of July through the 31st of December.
Correct.
I mean, with some adjustment, obviously.
Yes.
And then when would the process for the full hire begin?
Well, I think that's a conversation for the full board. I think we as the management committee could have a point of view, and it may depend on very much on what kind of process we want to run. So last time we ran a very traditional process, which takes 4 or 5 months, and we may feel like that we don't need to run another extensive process. So it a little bit depends on the broader conversation at the board level about the permanent candidate, what attributes again they want, and what type of process we want to run by when we start. That will drive when our start.
That affects my recommendation regarding Hannah's comment. I feel like working backwards from that on what is our vision for the hiring of the permanent one, working backwards and defining the interim one. I think we need that broader conversation before today we can say whether the interim can apply for it.
Here's my hesitation then. If I were going to be looked at as an interim, and I had interest in this position as a full-time, and I couldn't get an answer, then I'm not sure I'd want my name, I think Julia said this earlier, in the mix. So if we stay silent on it, and as Ben said, he felt that the governor would be comfortable with the person applying for the full-time position, and we're okay with that, and the individuals who we're looking at as the interim are okay with that, I'm fine with not putting it in. I just want to make sure that that we don't. I don't believe there is an inside. I think we have to look at everyone, and I don't want to preclude someone from the full-time position in any way by the work we do.
I agree, but this is Samuel again. But back to Julia's piece, Julia, we said 6 months, and now I'm wondering even if that's realistic, or would we do 6 months and then come back to the board and say we need another 3 months, as we're if the board's decision is to do a full search.
Correct. Well, I feel pretty comfortable, just the amount of groundwork we did last time around, in terms of discussion with stakeholders, identifying the criteria and the experience. I don't see it taking the same amount of time. I think we've learned a lot, even this last year with Dr. Cruz's appointment and tenure. So I feel 6 months is a pretty. I feel comfortable that we could, sort of it's within the margin of error of when we could move through a process and have a permanent chief education officer in place.
Okay.
And you participated in the process, and Hannah, your sense on the 6 months?
Yeah, Julie, I was just going to say that the board would have the opportunity before the 6 months had elapsed. I mean, this could be as early as next month or 4 months from now to extend the interim appointment for any additional duration that was required in order to cover whatever period of time it takes to do the search and hiring of a permanent. So I don't think we should look at this 6 month as a ceiling, but rather as a floor.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm fine with the 6 months. I think hopefully it won't take us as long.
We're going to be much more efficient, Hannah.
Yes, and we've had a lot of conversations, and I think we've learned a lot over the last year or so.
Bad and 17 revisions, huh?
Yeah.
Any other discussion about the underlying experience and qualifications and the tenure, the additional criteria? Because if not, I am going to move forward with a recommendation.
Move forward.
I would like us to move forward with a recommendation to the full OEIB that they support the appointment of Nancy Golden to be the interim chief education officer.
Second.
And let me talk a little bit about why the thing about Nancy as a good fit for this particular interim role. I think if you look at the experience and qualifications, Nancy has many of the attributes that we're looking for in a chief education officer's role. She's, as we're looking at this position as really integrating and aligning a pre-K to 20 model, it is, I think, will be helpful to have somebody who's had experience at multiple levels. Nancy's worked at the post-secondary level as the former director of the University of Oregon's administrative licensure program. She's been a successful superintendent for the Springfield Public Schools. She has also been an elementary school teacher, a director of special ed, so it brings, I think, multiple perspectives to the position, and as I think we found in our first recruitment, finding somebody who had experience in both K-12 and higher ed was difficult to find, so I think Nancy has a background that spans much of the continuum we're looking at. She also has, and I think when we talked about leadership with results, systems experience, Like Nancy's been considered a leader among the superintendents in the state, and the results in terms of student achievement, transformative change. She has a track record on the ground in schools, which is something that I think would be, and in Oregon schools, which would be very beneficial to our process and help her hit the ground running. She also, whether this was a positive part of her background, has had spent some time in the Capitol, serving as the governor's education advisor. So to see the sort of political world, the community side of things that are outside of the traditional school community, and I think Nancy also has a track record of a collaborative approach and an open and honest communicator. So for all those things, if I look at the criteria, the ability to step in and continue our agenda, aside from the fact that she's also been obviously sitting at the table with the board as we do our work, that she would be able to sort of step in from day one and continue to move things forward in terms of the implementation, building bridges and moving the agenda. So I think Nancy would be an excellent fit, and I also believe that she has agreed to let us move her name forward if that is the will and the recommendation from the subcommittee.
This is Mary. I would definitely support that, Julia. I agree with everything you said about Nancy's match and fit for the position. I think she'll do, she's obviously a very well-respected leader in public education in Oregon, and she knows how to develop and deploy a staff team. I think she'll bring the staff together. I think she also knows how to work with the board, which is important. And I think she knows how to collaborate. A lot of this work is going to get done not in Salem, but in the field through working with teachers and administrators and institutions across the state. And I think Nancy understands the importance of collaborating with all the partners to move the work. And the last thing I would say, I believe Nancy's great strength is she kind of knows what she doesn't know, and if she doesn't know something, she brings people together to figure it out and move the work forward. And I think that ability to really engage with people and bring them into the conversation so that we can move work is really important in this position, and I think she'll do a great job at it.
Sam or Hannah?
Well, Samuel, here's let me concur with what I've heard from both you, Julia, and from Mary. I think we're at a point of having some what I would just call a mid-course correction, and I think Nancy brings all of the kinds of skills in the background that we need. Although, as you know, as a higher ed person, I'd prefer somebody that had more higher ed experience, but you guys know me, so that's kind of where I'd like to see our school reform really address some of the other points here. But I think right now we're exactly at the point of needing some Nancy Golden on board, and that's sort of for dealing with the leadership issues, the organizational structures that still have to be broached, and really helping us work together to change some of our day-to-day behaviors to support our 40-40-20 vision, which is still a piece that we're lagging behind. I was reading, and I probably shouldn't bring this up, but I was reading the Oregonian, some of the letters to the editor, And I think there's a lot that a lot of the folks in Oregon have either misunderstood or not understood about what we're doing. And I think Nancy's the kind of communicator that is going to help raise our visibility with that. So for all of those reasons and my colleagues' reasons above, I support this.
Anna?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that everyone has said, and I just know that Nancy knows how to have a crucial conversation, and she's not afraid to dig in deep and make sure that we're addressing all of the issues and moving a solution forward that will work for kids. So I'm in full support of this recommendation.
Ben or Mark, do you have any comments?
I would just comment that I think under the, where we're at right now, she's the absolute logical one. I think you laid out pretty well what her skill set is, and just as an observer, I would support that. I would support you guys moving that forward.
Julia, the governor would be just extremely pleased for the subcommittee to bring forward this recommendation to the full board for its consideration on Monday. You spoke to the work that Nancy's done with the governor and for the governor, and up until practically this very day as alternate chair to the OEIB, and continuing to be a close advisor to him and the whole team here. So look forward to being able to have this discussion in front of the full board and the governor on Monday.
Can I, this is Samuel, a question for Ben. Would putting her name forward in the OEIB following up, would that jeopardize her continuing to be chair or designee chair?
Yeah, the assumption is, my assumption is that if Nancy is made Chief Education Officer, she will relinquish her role as alternate chair of the OEIB, that the governor would have a discussion with other members of the board about finding another chair to fill his seat when he's not in the room. So I do think that she would not, carry both of those titles.
And
okay.
I would just say that she shouldn't, because she will be the Chief Education Officer. To me, it's a different role that she's going to be playing. She's going to be.
Well, it's just like the superintendent doesn't sit on a board of education.
Right.
So it seems like a natural thing that would evolve to somebody else. Any other discussion or questions?
Are we taking a formal, and maybe I missed this, a formal vote or
we will
voting by consensus, or what? How are we doing this procedurally?
Well, we will be. So we have a motion on the floor and a second. We've had a discussion. I think I would, unless there is a call for a roll call vote, would just, I think the sense is that we could just do a calling for the ayes for the appointment. In terms of, I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity, this is the discussion phase, if there's additional points people would like to raise or questions, that now would be the time.
So just to clarify, Julia, this is Hannah. We are going to be silent on whether Nancy could apply for the full-time position, but it is the intent of the belief of the governor that she would be able to. Is that?
So,
I mean, if Nancy asks before she accepts this appointment, is that a conversation for the full board, or is she going to be told that she will be able to?
So what I was going to do is move through the motion and the vote, and then I was going to see if there were any other recommendations that people wanted to advance.
Okay.
And if there's not a motion, and a second, then we would be therefore silent on it.
Okay.
Okay, so with anything else, Mary, Samuel?
No, I call the question.
Okay.
Yeah, call the question.
So, based on her strong record of results, leadership, student-focused, and the ability to lead the efforts for us in the interim, I will be voting on our recommendation for Nancy Golden to recommend to the full board that Nancy Golden be the interim chief education officer. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Anything else on the agenda before I adjourn the committees? If not, the meeting is adjourned.